Overwhelmed at the southern border. So far, each day this week, Border Patrol has processed more than 10,000 migrants.
We're going to be barricading every area where people are crossing until we get every area.
Barriers on our border, and we will continue to use our arrest authority and arrest people coming across the border illegally.
He is actually enforcing the laws of the United States of America that already exist, that Joe Biden could enforce if he wanted to, but he's not doing it.
And said Texas can enforce its law against illegal immigration.
Force way across borders. A large group of migrants crossing into the U.S. from Mexico broke through razor wire and rushed the border wall, the Border Patrol said, the latest episode in a simmering national immigration crisis. Illegal immigration is a hugely contentious topic in the U.S., and the issue already figuring prominently in the campaign for the November presidential election. Republicans blame President Joe Biden for the recent record flow of migrants, while the White House accuses Republicans of deliberately sabotaging a bipartisan attempt to find a solution. Greg Abbott, the Republican governor of Texas and an ally of Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump, wrote on X shortly after the episode that officers quickly regained control and are redoubling the razor wire barriers. A crowd of dozens of migrants pushed aside part of a razor wire barricade the Texas National Guard had installed between the Rio Grande River, the natural boundary between Texas and Mexico, and the border wall in the West Texas city of El Paso.
And said Texas can enforce its law against illegal immigration.
Overwhelmed at the southern border. So far, each day this week, Border Patrol has processed more than 10,000 migrants.
Proposing a Texas border policy. Texas, very simply, is enforcing the laws that are the policy.
Here is you had a group of about 600 migrants separated by women and children and single adults.
Video published in the New York Post showed migrants pushing past the wire and overwhelming soldiers trying to contain them. After breaching the wire barricade, the migrants reached a tall section of border wall, which was impenetrable. At approximately 11 a.m. local, a large group of migrants breached Texas National Guard concertina wire barricades located between the Rio Grande River and the border wall in El Paso, U.S. Customs and Border Protection wrote in a statement. Border Patrol agents then took custody of the migrants at the adjacent border wall and transported them to the central processing station to be processed, it said. The law allows migrants to stay in the country while their asylum request advances or their deportation is processed if they do not meet requirements. The episode occurred as a Texas law winds its way through the courts that would allow state police to arrest and deport migrants who cross illegally into the U.S. from Mexico. On Tuesday, the law, known as Senate Bill 4, was placed on hold in the latest round of legal wrangling. The thorny issue of immigration was meanwhile on full display last month when ex-President Trump successfully pressured Republicans to block a bill in Congress that included the toughest border security measures in decades, the type of measures usually championed by the right. Operation Lone Star. Hundreds of migrants waiting to turn themselves in to federal border agents in El Paso breached the temporary fencing on the northern banks of the Rio Grande, briefly overwhelming Texas National Guard soldiers. A Department of Homeland Security official said that once the fencing was breached, between 400 and 600 migrants passed through the opening. They were subsequently apprehended by U.S. Border Patrol agents and detained pending further processing. Valeria Morales, a special operations supervisor with the U.S. Border Patrol, said the site of Thursday's incident has been a popular staging point for migrants attempting to cross for several weeks. When they come, and they're now being extorted, they're being beaten up on the Mexican side, they have that kind of urgency to make an entry, and that's what's happening right now, she said. The fencing and other barriers the migrants pushed down were erected as part of Governor Greg Abbott's Operation Lone Star, the state-led effort that was enacted in part to prevent migrants from entering the U.S. Current law allows migrants to apply for asylum once they reach U.S. soil, regardless of where they enter. The tense moment occurred at a time when the El Paso sector of U.S. Border Patrol has seen about 1,000 migrant encounters per day. Video captured by the New York Post shows a group of migrants tearing down a section of the temporary barriers as Texas National Guard soldiers tried to push them back. The video shows some of the migrants raising their hands to surrender to law enforcement after being stopped by the permanent border fence that has been in place near the Rio Grande for years. Morales deferred questions about the breach to the Texas National Guard. The Texas newsroom's requests for comment to the Texas Military Department were not immediately returned. Late Thursday, Governor Abbott posted on social media that state officers would install more barriers in that portion of El Paso. About the surge of illegal immigrants in El Paso, the Texas National Guard and Department of Public Safety quickly regained control and are redoubling the razor wire barriers, he posted.
3,000 or 4,000 people crossing illegally a day. For the past 3 days, there's an average of just 3 people.
Abbott have said that this is just a very expensive political stunt. He says it's necessary to protect the border.
We're going to be barricading every area where people are crossing until we get every area.
It's all along the border, but the main focal point right now is here in Eagle Pass. We're getting high crossings.
The Department of Public Safety is instructed to arrest every illegal immigrant involved for criminal trespass and destruction of property. In a statement Thursday afternoon, a Customs and Border Protection official said that as of 3 p.m. Mountain Time, all migrants in the group had been moved from the area. No one should believe the lies of smugglers. Individuals and families without a legal basis to remain in the U.S. will be removed, the official said in a statement. Additional personnel have been deployed to the scene, and the situation is under control. The U.S. Border Patrol continues to monitor the situation and has increased patrols in the area. Stronger federal enforcement. Despite genuine attempts from Texas state officials to secure the border and decrease migrant crossings, officials, pundits, and Democratic politicians denounced their efforts as inhumane, cruel, and ugly. 3 more migrants died over the weekend crossing the Rio Grande. Federal officials blame Texas National Guard soldiers deployed by Governor Greg Abbott, claiming Border Patrol agents attempted to rescue the migrants and were prevented from doing so, a claim they later walked back. This situation is a tragic example of the escalating conflict between state border enforcement and federal immigration policy, between Abbott and President Joe Biden, between Texas and sanctuary cities. Texas officials and policies are being demonized for trying to de-escalate a nearly impossible situation. Only the federal government is allowed to enforce immigration laws, the administration insists, yet somehow Texas alone has been tasked with keeping the nation's porous border secure with little federal support.
This land we're on right now was used by the federal government to further illegal activity, and I wanted to put a stop to it.
He is actually enforcing the laws of the United States of America that already exist that Joe Biden could enforce if he wanted to, but he's not doing it.
Every area where the cartels use as a crossing, we intend to be barricading.
The border's going to look like a war zone.
It is a war zone.
The current border and immigration chaos is the result of bad policies, not bad intentions on the part of Texas officials. The death of the migrants on the Rio Grande followed yet another controversial border decision that Biden's failure to enforce immigration laws forced Texas officials to make. Last week, Texas National Guard soldiers took control of a public park in Eagle Pass that Border Patrol had been using to hold migrants. There was a reason for this takeover. Last month, 12,600 migrant encounters took place in a single day, the bulk of them at Eagle Pass. Fox News reported that facilities there were 260% over capacity. Migrants outnumbered agents 200 to 1. Still, Texas cannot win for trying. Earlier this month, the Justice Department filed a lawsuit against Texas over a new law that allows state and local law enforcement officials to arrest, jail, and prosecute illegal migrants.
Barriers on our border, and we will continue to use our arrest authority and arrest people coming across the border illegally.
They have apprehended more than 200,000 migrants so far.
Numbers on Operation Lone Star. That's the state's response to the unprecedented illegal crossings on our border.
Immigration reform. Immigration reform is an issue that the mayor is discussing on a federal level.
Though many of the current immigration and border issues were caused by its own policies, the administration would have Texas officials handle the border on their own, while also defending themselves from lawsuits for doing it wrong. Even the tragic story of the recent migrant deaths follows a similar pattern. As obvious as it might be, swimming across the Rio Grande to Texas is not a legal port of entry. Yet migrants and their young children regularly try to cross, risking drowning. Last year, a Texas Department of Public Safety agent saved a migrant family from drowning. Drowning became so common that officials placed wire buoys in the river to prevent people from going in. Abbott was scolded, then sued for the move, and the buoys were forcibly removed. Now that 3 more people have died trying to swim across the Rio Grande again, it's Abbott's fault again. Abbott's program to bus migrants to cities where they are supposedly welcome faces the same predicament. New York Mayor Eric Adams recently sued several bus companies for transporting migrants from Texas to New York, per Abbott's directives. According to Abbott's office, Texas has bused 100,000 migrants to so-called sanctuary cities. But now, cities which have received only a fraction of the migrants Texas has claimed they've reached capacity. Yet Texas is supposed to continue to handle this issue alone, with the federal government as a foe rather than an ally? Since Abbott launched Operation Lone Star, an effort to deploy as many resources as possible to secure the border and stop illegal migrant crossings, Texas has seen almost 500,000 apprehensions of illegal migrants. Law enforcement agencies have made 38,300 criminal arrests and seized over 453 million lethal doses of fentanyl. As any good law enforcement officer or criminal attorney knows, instances of prevented crime and people who haven't died from fentanyl poisoning don't make the news. Only the tragic events do. So while media outlets or Democratic politicians fail to acknowledge over 38,000 criminal arrests, 3 migrant deaths are reported and condemned immediately. Texas officials are truly in a no-win predicament. If they don't actively counteract Biden's policies, the border remains a national threat and migrants become too numerous to process. If Abbott implements the policies he'd like, including laws, buoys, and the Texas National Guard and more, Texas officials are demonized, sued, and smeared. Rest assured, what's happening now is not the result of bad actors, death wishes, or cruelty, but conflicts between state and federal laws and Texas and the Biden administration's views on how to implement them. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.